Alright, from the last tutorial I was talking about this hammer here, and I feel like still the end here, of course it's in perspective, it's not drawn straight up, but the end needs to come out much further, and so I'm just basically, again, drawing the line further back. And that's the cool thing about cage volume, is that you can always adjust, and because we have that other mark here, that line, I have a reference point. In fact, it's not a useless reference point, because it does define some form. In fact, it defines this sort of thicker area of the body of the end of the hammer here. So I can still utilize that, which is really nice. And so basically, I'm just kind of drawing along here, remembering that it goes in and out. So I'm allowing that to happen. And then this end here, I think it needs to come out further. The little scoop part here. And basically just go in here. This hammer is definitely not going to touch the edge of the paper, but notice this one down here, I move the camera down here, it actually goes off the edge. With each object that you draw, one thing that's really critical is drawing those planes. So for this hammer, see the top surface versus the side surface here. So on this hammerhead here, you can see it definitely is not clearly defined yet. There's some light areas and some dark areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go darker and heavier with the pencil line just to kind of emphasize this more. I felt like it needed to come out more, and I can come back in and kind of redefine it. It's okay to pick up your pencil every once in a while, but you try, again, not to pick it up as much as possible. So now I'm going back over this side here, and then come back over, and I felt like the side was pretty good, and then angle out. And then I'm going to show that inside lip. The inside lip is like the tricky part of the hammer hook, and it's basically, it has this like teardrop kind of effect here that basically wraps around on one part, and then you can kind of just connect it up onto the other. Now, in terms of shading, one thing that would be really critical is to directionally shade one way, primarily, to define that plane, which is the back side here, or the top side, I should say. And then this side here, I would shade maybe this way for this part, right? And then on the little side, you know, I can darken in here. This part here, it has a real deep shadow. In the hook here, it's actually really dark, so I'd kind of shade this in really dark here too. And then just keep building up. The other thing I want to talk about in this tutorial is basically the wrench and the screwdriver. I'm just going to kind of go over some basics here. With the wrench, make sure you clearly define the edge here. Yeah, a lot of people will draw this very flat without showing the edge. I'm going to do this a little bit faster, but you know, making sure you clearly define that edge is really critical to this object. So once I get to the circular part, I can wrap around kind of like a question mark almost, and then go back and redefine any of these edges that I want to redefine. So this is the side here, right here. The top I haven't defined yet. So now I can come across here, maybe with the information that's stamped on it tool to kind of, it has this little pill shape. I can just kind of sketch out here. And again, the slower you are, I wouldn't say necessarily it's the most accurate, but you'll find that you'll be a little more accurate if you're slower than speeding up. I'm kind of speeding up for demonstration purposes, but I would, you know, if I'm not recording this, I would definitely be moving quite a bit slower. And to be honest, I haven't drawn in a long time. It's probably been at least 3 or 4, well, at least 3 months for sure. And so I feel kind of rusty. And the nice thing about cage volume is if you feel rusty at all, you can go back to it. It's a great sort of perception drawing technique to kind of get you back in the game. I usually don't recommend waiting that long to draw. I was taking a online class, 3D modeling with Jay Machado, and he was he still is a senior modeler at Industrial Light Magic. It was a really cool class. Learned how to do cool little spaceships. So I was kind of focused in the 3D world, and the digital 3D that is, and not focus on drawing so much. So, but I like to draw as much as possible every day, or every other day. I think that the more consistency you have in terms of drawing, the better it's going to be for you. I think that's enough to kind of give you the idea of the edge. Again, you got the edge here and the edge here. Now for the screwdriver, if I was going to draw this guy, lots of details, lots of different things going on here. The overall form I usually start with is the sort of area, the connecting point between the tip and the plastic. And it's a sort of knot structure that has an up and down kind of thing going on. This is a Phillips screwdriver. And I've drawn this thing before, but it has these little notches here. And again, I am drawing a little bit faster than I normally would. And I just realized you're not seeing it. It's off camera. Sorry about that. Let me pull it in the camera here. You're probably yelling at me via internet. Going, wait, you are out of frame. I have the camera set up, my phone, and I couldn't check. I always should remember to check to make sure I'm on target there. But now I could come in here and kind of draw the tip. And again, you can kind of see how I'm looping things together. I'm trying to connect everything. And then if I need to go back and define something from the other side, I can literally nudge around it and find my own way around it. Or literally lift up the object and do it that way. Right now I'm kind of doing the little loops that are going on right here, this part right here. And then from here, you got the handle structure that goes back. I don't know, I really find this structure very pleasing for some reason. I don't know, maybe because I've drawn on a lot, or I just think it's kind of a clever design, having these little notches in between. There is a physical reason to these tools. There always is a reason for usability, and I think that's something I really dig about tools. We sometimes complain in education about different applications not having great usability, and I always think tools, for the most part, I mean not every tool, but a lot of tools out there, they test a lot and they get feedback from construction fields and other areas to determine what works, and they do a lot of testing, because if you have a good tool, it will pretty much last for almost forever if you take care of it. So I know that not all this is correct, but I'm just kind of showing you how I would go about it. I would go back and correct it. So maybe I would make this tip here, and again, sorry about that, off camera a little bit. Draw this part here, loop it around, and I would cut off a little bit of that, so maybe I'd go with the darker lead pencil. I was just using like a number 2 pencil, like a 2HB. So here I could come in and really heavily darken it. I'll jump around different areas just so you get an idea of what this screwdriver will look like. How I would go about drawing it. One thing I like about the screwdriver is that, or drawing anything with cage volume, is that basically you can, if I feel like this tip needs to come out further, I can go in there and basically redraw it and allow it to go longer out, which is really cool. I don't feel any kind of preciousness towards the drawing. I know some artists will feel that way after a while. They'll be like, oh, this is some cool illustration or cool, beautiful drawing that I want it to be absolutely perfect. And thing you have to understand about cage volume, it's a learning process. It's a process of learning how to draw. And if you're okay with that, like making mistakes and changing things, your drawing is going to be tremendously better. There are so many more times where I don't have to change things because I've learned this technique of cage volume, of not spending the time erasing. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't do that sometimes, but for the most part, I like to see that underlying construction of the drawing. And the reality is I could come in here and shade this in a way, kind of like with this one here, the hammer, where you don't see it so much. You don't see those construction lines. So I can come in here and put a little cash out here, and shade that around. And these lines are so thin, the tip of the hammer here, if I flip this over again, has pretty defined hard edges, except for maybe this tip here in the corner, which I was kind of struggling with, but now I think I can define it with a little heavier, darker line. And then with this lighting condition change, I can kind of add these little cracks and imperfections I see right here on the surface. I don't know if you can see that, kind of bring it in a little bit, but there's these surface marks here that I definitely see. So, take your time. Again, with each tool, spend at least 10-15 minutes. I'll probably do one more tutorial like this where I show some pen ink work. I think pencil's fine though. You can work just fine with pencils. You do want to have a large sheet of paper like this. This is 18 by 24, so if you have half that size, you could work with it. I've done tools that size before, but they tend to get cramped, so maybe you have some overlapping of tools, and that's okay. I mean, just like right now, pretend this is a drawing of the wrench here. This could be right over the hammer there like that. That would work out fine. I could have another hammer going this way or, coming off the edge here. So have an engaging composition, kind of think of the flow. Like if I drew a hammer here, it'd be kind of cool. Or something going this way because it would kind of lead us into the composition as we move in. Move the camera again. So as we moved into the composition here. So yeah, I hope you have fun, and until next time, cheers.